First of all, I would like to thank everybody who is in attendance here this evening. This is really a great day. Certainly a great time for me as mayor to recognize these worthy officers that are sitting here in front of me for what I will call, above and beyond the call of duty. But before we get started, I would like to start off, if we could, with, as we normally do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if all could rise and as we salute the flag. And while we're all still standing, I think it's appropriate this time that we take a moment of silence in recognition of the families, victims, and the whole town of Newtown, Connecticut. So if we could take a moment of silence, please. Thank you. You may all be seated. I'm just going to say a few brief words. I think it's no secret that oftentimes our police department, is only recognized maybe as they pull somebody over going through a red light or through a stop sign, maybe responding to a call about loud music or barking dogs, but they go, I can say firsthand, they go far, far beyond that. And I'm very, very pleased that Chief Cafarelli has found it and seen fit to recognize officers that go above and beyond the call of duty, which oftentimes happens not with much fanfare, not with much publicity, but I can speak from on a personal level as mayor, and I know my city councilors, our city councilors that are sitting behind us. It doesn't go without notice by us. And so I'm really, really grateful that Chief Cafarelli has put in place a program to recognize the good work that you guys do each and every day. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you your Chief of Police, Joe Cafarelli.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'd like to welcome Mayor Rizzo, distinguished guests, City Council, family, and friends. I'd like to thank you for joining me in recognizing these officers for their bravery. We take our police officers for granted. Sometimes we meet the officers when we run a red light or when our neighbors get too loud. But these officers here before you represent the reason we become police officers. These officers personify the best the police department has to offer. These officers put the safety of others before themselves. What makes these officers react the way they do? Not because they seek accolades. If you ask them why they did what they did, they will tell you they're just doing their job. Just doing their job. For few jobs require workers to charge armed suspects in a hostage barricade situation, or rescue drowning victims or pull burning victims from a car that's on fire. These officers do more than their jobs. These officers have set the standard for the men and the women of the Revere Police Department, and they have set it high. These officers show the community they serve why this is far more than just a job. For most officers I know, this is a vocation. It's a calling. When officers report to work, they know deep in the recess of their soul, this could be their last watch. Or this could be the day they may have to defend the lives of the public they serve with deadly force. But every day they put the service before themselves. It is with great pride and a great sense of pride that I present these officers before you to recognize for their bravery. But it is with personal pride that I can say that I have had the pleasure to work with these officers as brother officers. Officers La Rosa and Lopez, front and center, please. These officers are being recognized for their actions taken above and beyond the call of duty, which placed their lives at great risk. On April 10, 2011, Officer La Rosa and Officer Angel Lopez arrived at Brown Circle and found that a motor vehicle accident had taken place and that the vehicle was on fire. These officers observed a large crowd around the motor vehicle, and as they approached, citizens were attempting to get the motor vehicle to pull out the driver, who appeared to be unconscious and trapped in the burning car. The car was observed to have flames coming from the dashboard and the driver's side window. The vehicle was surrounded by thick black smoke. Officer LaRosa was first to attempt to reach into the car to pull the driver out, but due to the flames, it was impossible. Both officers retrieved fire extinguishers in an attempt to put out the fire. After exhausting the fire extinguishers, the car again became engulfed in smoke and flame. These officers observed the driver as he began to regain consciousness. The driver was observed as he began to push himself to the back seat of the car. The driver's clothes and feet were on fire. It was at this time that both Officer LaRosa and Officer Lopez were able to grab hold of the driver's legs and pull him from the burning car. If it were not for these officers' quick actions, there would have been further injuries or loss of life. Officer LaRosa and Officer Lopez's brave actions reflect great credit upon themselves, the Revere Police Department, and the City of Revere. By my order, these officers are receiving the Commendation for Bravery. Gentlemen. Officer Cafarelli, front and center, please. Officer Cafarelli is being recognized for actions taken that were above and beyond the call of duty, which placed his life at great risk. On November 30th, 1997, Lieutenant Santoro, the duty supervisor, was alerted by a neighbor that the residence at 34 Pleasant Street, directly across the street from the then Revere Police Headquarters, was on fire. The lieutenant ordered that the fire department be notified as he ran out the door with Sergeant Jeremiah Goodwin and Officer Paul Cafarelli. They found heavy smoke emanating from the house and broke through the front door to find an elderly woman unconscious on the floor. The woman was brought to the front lawn, where attempts were made to revive her. The woman was transported to the hospital, where she was pronounced dead. These officers entered the smoke-filled house, placing themselves in harm's way. These officers' bravery reflects great credit upon themselves, the Revere Police Department, and the City of Revere. By my order, the Commendation Medal for Bravery is awarded to Officer Cafarelli. Officer DeSimone, front and center, please. Officer DeSimone is being recognized for actions taken that were above and beyond the call of duty, which placed his life at great risk. On September 3rd, 2006, Officer DeSimone was dispatched to 18 Fitzhenry Square to a 911 emergency call. Officer DeSimone entered the first-floor hallway and observed two male parties engaged in a loud argument. Officer DeSimone made entry and was confronted by one of the male parties, who was now brandishing a large knife. Officer DeSimone ordered the man to drop the knife, which he ignored. As he continued to close in on this officer, holding the knife above his head in a threatening manner, Officer DeSimone utilized his OC spray on the man, which had no effect on the man. A standoff with the man began, where he would advance to the officers, refusing to comply with officers' orders to drop the knife. As additional officers arrived on scene, Officer DeSimone took the opportunity to use his asp baton to knock the weapon from the man's hand, which allowed Officer DeSimone, with the assistance of additional officers, to place the man into custody. Officer DeSimone placed himself in danger while attempting to place an armed suspect in custody. His calmness allowed him to take the armed suspect into custody without having to use deadly force. Officer DeSimone's action and bravery reflect great credit upon himself, the Revere Police Department, and the city of Revere. It is by my order that he receives a Commendation Medal for bravery. Officer Caramanica, Officer Caramanica, front and center. Officer Caramanica and Officer Talbot are being recognized for actions taken that were above and beyond the call of duty, which placed their lives in great risk. Officer Talbot is being awarded posthumously. On March 15, 2005, Officer Daniel Talbot and Officer David Caramanica responded to 71 Franklin Avenue to a report of a possible assault by knife. Officers arrived and encountered a black male who had been stabbed. Officers heard yelling from inside the house, proceeded to enter, where they encountered a white male holding a knife. The suspect was within 30 feet when he began to run down the stairs toward these officers. These officers gave the suspect verbal commands to drop the weapon, which he ignored. The suspect was within 10 steps when he was ordered to drop the knife, which he did. After a brief struggle, the suspect was then taken into custody without injury to the suspect or the officers. Officer Talbot and Caramanica placed themselves in danger while attempting to place an armed suspect into custody. Their calmness allowed them to take an armed suspect into custody without having to use deadly force. These officers' actions and bravery reflect great credit upon themselves, the Revere Police Department, and the city of Revere. It is by my order that they received the Exceptional Meritorious Service Medal for bravery. Officer Caramanica is being recognized for a second award. He's being recognized for action taken above and beyond the call of duty, which placed his life at great risk. On February 22, 2008, Officer David Caramanica responded to 73 Neponset Street for a report of a man holding a knife to a child, threatening to harm the child. Officer Caramanica arrived along with additional officers. The suspect was observed with the knife and was directed to drop the weapon. The suspect ignored commands to do so, but after a short time he complied. When officers approached the suspect to place him into custody, he made a threatening movement by reaching into his jacket. Officer Caramanica, fearing that the suspect had another weapon, reacted immediately by tackling the suspect and taking him into custody. Officer Caramanica was confronted with the situation that did not allow him time to pause. He acted decisively and placed the suspect into custody without injury to himself, other officers, the victim, or the suspect. This officer's bravery reflects great credit upon himself, the Revere Police Department, and the city of Revere. By my order, Officer Caramanica is receiving the Commendation Medal for bravery. Officer Zingali, front and center, please. Officer Zingali is being recognized for actions taken that were above and beyond the call of duty, which placed his life at great risk. On October 28, 2004, Officer Zingali was the first responding officer to a call of a man with a gun at 171 Revere Street. On arrival, this officer entered the front door and encountered the suspect, who was on the stairs, threatening numerous victims with a firearm. Upon seeing this officer, the suspect fled to the second-floor apartment. Officer Zingali gave chase and followed the suspect through the apartment and exited onto a rear stairwell. During the chase, the officer observed the suspect throw the gun into a bedroom while exiting the apartment. During the chase, Officer Zingali could see that the suspect had a large kitchen knife in his pant pocket. The officer captured the armed suspect on the back stairs of a multi-level building. After securing the suspect, Officer Zingali removed the handgun which had been thrown during the chase. The gun was found to be a .45 caliber handgun loaded with 6 rounds with the serial number obliterated. The suspect was also found to have a large amount of cocaine on his person. Officer Zengali was confronted with a situation that did not allow him time to pause. He acted decisively in pursuit of the suspect in spite of the report of the handgun being involved. Officer Zengali was able to capture this armed suspect without injury to himself, the victim, or the suspects. This officer's bravery reflects great credit upon himself, the Revere Police Department, and the City of Revere. By my order, Officer Zengali is receiving the Exceptional Meritorious Service Medal for Bravery. Officers Hardigan and Officers Wilson, front and center, please. These officers standing before you are to be recognized for actions that were taken that were above and beyond the call of duty, which placed their lives at great risk. On May 11, 2009, officers arrived at the Sons of Italy Social Club for a report of an armed robbery with a handgun. When officers arrived, they encountered a masked suspect armed with what appeared to be a semi-automatic handgun exiting the club. The suspect ran back into the club upon seeing these officers, but moments later the suspect exited the club, but this time he was holding an elderly male hostage at gunpoint. The suspect attempted to make his way through the parking lot using the hostage as a shield and threatening these officers with the handgun. Officer Hardigan was first officer to react when seeing an opportunity and without regard to his safety rapidly charged the suspect. Upon seeing Officer Hardigan's actions, Captain Guido, Lieutenant Randall, Officer Tamaro, and Officer Wilson all rushed the suspect, and within seconds the suspect was disarmed and placed into custody. These officers' bravery reflects great credit upon themselves, the Revere Police Department, and the City of Revere. By my order, Officer Hardigan will receive the Exceptional Meritorious Service Award for Bravery, and Officer Wilson the Commendation Award for Bravery. Officer Rose, front and center, please. Officer Rose being recognized for action taken that were above and beyond the call of duty which placed his life at great risk. On February 25, 2008, Revere police units were dispatched at 35 Fernwood Ave after a female party called 911 stating that she had been stabbed repeatedly and that her assailant was still attacking her. Numerous units arrived on scene. It was Officer Rose and Lieutenant Azari who entered the front of the residence. Once inside, the officers were met by family members who stated that their mother was in the basement being stabbed by their brother. Without hesitation, Officer Rose and Lieutenant Azari descended the spiral staircase which led to the dimly lit basement apartment. These officers observed a large amount of blood on the stairway, walls, and floor of the basement apartment. Officer Rose reached the bottom of the staircase first, followed by Lieutenant Azari, when they observed the suspect holding a knife in a threatening posture. These officers ordered the suspect numerous times to drop the knife. When the suspect aggressively moved towards these officers, Officer Rose discharged his pistol twice, hitting the suspect in the chest, dropping him to the ground. Lieutenant Azari then approached the suspect, kicked the knife out of the suspect's reach. The victim was found during the search of the apartment and was transported to the hospital where she was pronounced dead on arrival. Disregarding their own safety, Officer Rose and Lieutenant Azari did not hesitate in their actions while trying to save the life of the victim. Unfortunately, the victim did succumb to the injuries she sustained from her son, who had stabbed her over 30 times. By reacting to this unusually violent incident in a calm and professional manner, Officers Rose and Lieutenant Azari may have saved the lives of the other family members in the residence. These officers' bravery reflects great credit upon themselves, the Revere Police Department, and the City of Revere. It is by my order that Officer Rose is awarded the Medal of Valor, which is the highest award for bravery given to an officer of the Revere Police Department. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this. When you need to look for heroes in our world, you've got them right here. These are our heroes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. That will conclude these very special ceremonies. I know this is just the first in what I believe will be many ceremonies like this where we recognize those calls above and beyond the call of duty that you guys have to be faced with virtually every single day. So congratulations, a job well done. I know I speak on behalf of all the residents here in the city of Revere when I say thank you for all your hard work and what you do for us each and every day. Thanks so much.